Well, welcome to this week's Cattle Call. I'm Susan Littlefield here on the Rural Radio Network. It is another wild ride that we're seeing within the trade. We're going to talk a little bit about what's been happening with this new delivery process, what's going on within the box beef trade, and you can add to it a bit of cash already taking place this week. And the big question, how true are the weights on these cattle? We're going to get all the details. As you see, Brad Kooima has joined us. He is with Kooima, and Barlick out of Sioux Center, Iowa. So let's start first and foremost with what we're seeing and a bit of cash going on this week, Brad.
Well, it's a little bit better and a little bit earlier in the week than normal as well. I sold cattle today, early this morning already, actually, $1.27 picked up with the standard weigh up, which is better. The sale barn trade too today, couldn't help but watch what was going on, what I call locally, but our closest delivery point at Worthing also has a fat cattle sale today, and they got along really good, I'll tell you what. In fact, I watched some 17 weight steers bring 129. How do you like that? In fact, the bigger they were, the more they brought, which is kind of a telling thing. There wouldn't be very many August 18s historically, where I would say the bigger they are, the more they were worth. So the cash market is finally improving a little bit now. I'd like to think that part of that reason is because there's been a little bit of more negotiated trade. We still need a lot more, of course, but we are seeing some improvement in negotiated trade. But still, it's been a little bit since you and I visited, but we have still the same issue of a two-tiered market. Mm-hmm. The South allegedly has a few too many cattle for what the capacity they have. So, they limped along today at 21 with an instances of 23, where we got along here pretty easy today at 25 to 7. And that's about as much disparity as I remember seeing. But I guess, they'll tell you it's because of supply.
What are your thoughts on this whole new delivery process that we're now a couple weeks into?
Well, I really don't like to pull punches very much. I'm kind of direct to a fault. To me, I don't see that there's a basis incentive to be making these deliveries. In other words, I don't think the futures are high enough to justify the extra cost of delivery against what the cash market is down there. So, it's a free country, sure, whatever. But I'm a bit frustrated by the way the whole system works, where you can deliver, nobody wants them. Because you can't get them dead on time because the packers are all bought up for 3 or 4 weeks, right? So nobody dares to stand in there to take delivery or to be long, and you need a long speculator. Always when they get out, who's going to buy it from them? The market goes down naturally then, right? So then they wait another day, and okay, now I can get an extra $2 for doing nothing, and I can reclaim these cattle, and I got $2 a hundred. Thank you, the CME. I don't see what function that does for price discovery or for any market. I've made this argument in front of the CME. They are slow to react. How's that for polite? This whole retender thing makes no sense to me. I get it if you can retender and you're a long speculator and you screwed up, you forgot to get out, whatever. Okay, I made a mistake. I'll pay the $1. Let me out. I don't want the cattle in Tulia, Texas. But this process of just getting paid to reclaim, knowing that the system is right now where the packer's so long bought, you can't get cattle dead on a timely basis. I don't know. We can do better.
All right. Box beef, it took another jump. This has been a couple week process that's been going on with these box beef. Is this continued jump going to continue?
Well, normally, why do we even bring up normally? It's been so long since we've had a normal year. Let's see. The Holcomb fire year, the reason the boxes rallied, you remember that? That's what the USDA told us, because of Labor Day demand. Right. So yes, there is a seasonal to rally the beef a little bit going into until a week ahead of Labor Day. So it's a two-edged deal, actually. Some of it is because our kill is a little lighter than expected because we still have this absentee problem, yada, yada, where people aren't killing at 90. Well, certainly not at 100%, and most of them aren't even at 90% of efficiency at most of the plants. So maybe there's a little less meat, or at least a little less choice meat in particular going into the system. A lot of non-feds. And you've got well, the bottom line to the deal is demand is awesome, both globally and domestically, right? Now, some of the domestic demand may be tied to the extra unemployment benefits, the extra money that's being handed out by the current administration. And I want to be sensitized to that just a little bit, because those extra benefits, I understand, are going to expire in September, I think. So we'll see if we have a few more people working, and maybe people a little less free with throwing the money around. I think people that this free money, or whatever the right term of it is, and some people deserve it. I don't mean that, but I mean though that money has a tendency to be spent more easily, on like beef, which is maybe not necessarily could be a choice to use. So I don't know. Most people are thinking that the box beef probably isn't going to go a lot higher than here, but I can also tell you, Susan, that most people didn't think we were going to do anything like we just did. I mean, we just put $65 on in about 3 weeks. We took the choice select spread back out to $30. Demand is fine. I would be slow to give up on the idea that the demand is going to break the market.
What are we doing with these weights? Normally, and you and I were talking about this before we started the cattle call, normally weights, we start to see some peaking and some increasing, but it sounds like average weights might not be where they are when you compare them to a year ago numbers.
Well, you're right. And I think that's a good question. I was trying to bait the hook a little bit with my initial comment about how the bigger they were, the more they brought at the one particular sale barn today. The seasonal tendency is absolutely one-sided that the weights go up this time of year. It's because of the cattle that we feed in the north. We're feeding calves. The longer they're on feed, the bigger they are. That's just the rub of the green this time of the year. That weight's they just always go up. So one needs to be careful, though, when you're compared to a year ago, of course, because that was the COVID thing. And yes, we're below a year ago by 14 or 15 pounds on carcasses. But I think you really have to back up and look, well, what are we doing week on week? Where are we at compared to the 5-year average? Now, we're still over the 5-year average, but what I do think is interesting is that week on week here, like we were down a couple 3 pounds last week again and the week before, which, one robin doesn't make it spring, but still, when you compare the tendency to always go up this time of year, and if they're not, maybe we're a little more current than everybody lets on. Maybe we don't have this big backup of cattle that some of these analysts are suggesting that we have. I suggest that maybe that they missed. I think the numbers are less than what the industry thinks. And yes, I would like to see us kill more, 650, 660 a week. I would love that. But the fact that we haven't and still haven't seen this balloon in the weights has me thinking that I think maybe we're just a little more current than what most of the folks think.
All right. It'll be interesting to see what happens week over week. Thanks so much, Brad, for joining us this week.
Good to be back.
Yes, very much so. That is this week's Cattle Call. Just a reminder, commodity futures and options do involve substantial risk of loss, are not suitable to all investors. And that is the Cattle Call. I'm Susan Littlefield, right here on the Rural Radio Network.